All right, Deeckla, thank you so much for joining us today. This is going to be a fun conversation interview, our first ever in our Founder Stories series. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank
How are
you.
things going for you?
They've been awesome. Yeah, it's been a wild ride since we started for sure, but it's been awesome all the way.
I love it. And, we're just square in the middle of cohort 3 of the fellowship, but your journey extends way before, it's going to extend way after. And so I kind of want to ask you a few questions about your journey and your story, a little bit of how the fellowship has kind of played into that, but a little bit more just around you and what you're building and how it's come to be. So honestly, if you don't mind sharing, I know about your background, but do you mind sharing a little bit of your journey, your story to get to now, sort of your entrepreneurial kind of how you
How
got
did
into
I get
entrepreneurship?
here?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
totally. So I'm a corporate girl. I've been in the corporate world since the very beginning of my career. I first landed a gig at Boeing, and then my real career started at Microsoft. I was in marketing and product management, working for Xbox. And then after that, I went to work for Nordstrom, got really deep in the customer space, retention and loyalty, and then got hired on by Eddie Bauer, which was my most recent role, where I was director of retention and loyalty, kind of overseeing, the growth of the business and the customer base, and getting a really good lens on how do we develop the business in so many different ways. And in February, I actually decided to leave my job. I had fully intended to go back into the corporate world after taking a quick break for myself. And as I was sitting there and just kind of trying to relax, my mind started, churning with ideas. And I was like, could I possibly try to do something on my own for a little bit and see what happens? And then I started coming up with concepts because initially it was just kind of like a joke. Like I told my husband, I was like, hey, like what if I did my own thing? And then eventually it became real, and it became concepts and ideas and interviews, and now it's becoming very real. So that's where I am right now.
You
And
manifested your entrepreneurial journey in jokes and they became real. I love it. I love it.
yeah.
How I want to kind of zoom in for a second on that sort of primordial moment where you weren't a founder, but you were doing the initial activities, and then at some
Yeah.
point you're like, "Huh, I might be doing this," right?
Yeah.
That transition moment is fluid. Maybe it was a little more concrete for you, or maybe you felt it. I want to understand, like, what was that moment like? Like, what led up to it? And if you can, like, I don't know, pinpoint is the right word, but if you can even give us a sense for like before I was this and after I was that, and then we can kind of feel like how did you find that conviction and kind of tip over to like, wow, I'm doing this.
Yeah, so it started with a literally a moment. I was sitting in my dining room table. I think it was like 10 in the morning or something. And I was just jotting down some things in my notepad. I had this idea of in my spare time, I'm going to write a book or something. And then all of a sudden, I was just like, literally, like just sitting there thinking. And I go, what if like I didn't spend all my time working really hard for somebody else's mission? Like, what if this became my own mission? And literally went like, God, like what if this could become something really amazing? And that's where it started. Literally like 2 hours later, my husband walks down to the kitchen and I go, hey, like I had this crazy idea. It's so funny. Like we were just joking about it. But the real conviction, there was definitely a transitional point where I had consulted with a few different people that I really care about in my life and said, like, here's what I'm thinking. Here's some ideas that I have. Here's my, my background. Like, could I do this? What are your thoughts? And it took a circle of my closest friends, some of my mentors and advisors, and a few other people, like somebody who actually participated in day one, for me to talk to these people and then really figure out that, hey, there's something here and I could do this. And of course, like my career coach, I think was the one that really heavily swayed it, along with my husband, and them having like the support and understanding that, like kind of having somebody else who's believing in you that you could do this. And I feel like that goes a really long way for you to have your own conviction as well.
That is so real. Thanks for sharing that. I love that. There's so much to unpack there, but I want to also let it sit because in your own words, you said it really, really well. Let me ask you though, because one thing I always think about for founders who are just getting into their thing is there's the journey, the personal journey, and then there's the thing, right? How were you confident in the thing at that moment? Like how much did you have sort of worked out? Had you done a lot of those interviews? Were you like, man, this is a $1 billion idea? Were you like, this is still pretty loose, but I'm over here now feeling good? Like, how did those two interplay? And
Yeah,
did one influence the other? Yeah, what was that
I
like?
do think that they are separate. There is the me as a founder and CEO. And honestly, it was that moment where I had these really big concepts that, like, I don't want to sound cheesy by any means, but the moment that I had these concepts and thought of myself as a founder and CEO, there was like an energy buzz, like something was happening. And I was like, wow, this is really like, I feel like it's kind of like a puzzle piece where you're just fitting into yourself for a moment. And that's how I felt. And I apologize if it sounds cheesy, but that's really how I felt. And that's kind of how I, kind of trusted myself to go into this. And in the concept itself, I think, there's something there. And it usually starts with your own personal experience. And then the more you talk to other people, the more you refine it, it becomes something stronger that you really believe in. And that's a process. I don't think that that is ever complete, to be honest. I think that's an ongoing work stream. So I'd say that the mission behind the concept, yes, is something that you fully believe in and drives you, but the concept itself and how it executes is a work in progress, probably forever.
So, as a first time founder, something I like to say is they don't teach you this in business school, right? They teach you a lot. And, your corporate career teaches you things. You pick stuff up just, along the way in life. What have been some of the learning curves that you've had to go up, whether it's tactical, whether it's about like controlling your emotions, whether it's about, being that CEO and whatever level it might be. What are some of the more prominent learning curves that you kind of recognize that you've faced, whether or not you're all the way up them or you're just kind of like, man, this is hard and I'm working it out as we go?
Yeah. So I think that one of the hardest things is the uncertainty for me. And I, had met in the very beginning with David Chase, who's also been on this program. He's a good friend of mine. And I had talked to him about, it's so hard when you don't really know, like, what is the next thing? What's the next step? How is this going to go out? And he said, embrace the uncertainty. And that resonated so much with me. Also, reading books like The Lean Startup was really helpful because you realize it's not like a hey, I've decided and we're going to go do this exactly this way. It's more of like, hey, this journey is really uncertain, and that's the beauty in it. It's like a puzzle that you have to solve, and that thrills me as a person. And so I feel like really embracing that and being okay with knowing that you might have a customer interview that may shift everything that you've been thinking so far, make you go, oh my gosh, well, now I'm really uncertain about what I'm doing or how this is going to shake out, but trusting that in a few days you're going to get there, like with another customer interview, with bouncing ideas, whatever it is, just kind of trust the process and that you will get there. That's been the hardest thing for me because I come from the corporate world where yes, you have some fluidity for sure, but there's a lot that's already set in stone for you. And so that has been a really big shift for me personally.
Yeah, I love saying that, trust the process, as well as that's very meta for you, but I think really important. I'm glad you said it in our first one of these, which is the first thing to learn is to embrace the ambiguity, embrace that you're on a learning journey and it's going to be ups and downs. One of the things I like to say to folks is you just need to prepare yourself like for this whole thing, whether that's to be ready for the emotional ups and downs, for the twists and turns and the setbacks. That's the life of an entrepreneur. And then, the stuff of it, I don't know, that changes for every single one of us, but that other thing is consistent.
Mhm.
Let me ask you this. Maybe I should have asked you this even before we got into sort of how the journey has been, but as an entrepreneur, as part of that kind of genesis story of like finding conviction, where do you see yourself going, right? What is entrepreneurship? What's the outcome for you? Are you here to, put people on Mars? Are you here to make $1 million? Are you here to, is it your mission? Is it some other outcome? Is it, just learn the journey? Like, how do you see where this is going? And even a little bit, how did you see it? And has that changed? Like, as you like, just like, where do you set your sights in this whole thing as you're going down the path?
Yeah. Um, like I said, it started with a crazy idea, but where it is right now is I'd say the ability to connect people and make something in their lives easier that really drives me. And I like it so much because it's my own problem. So I'm really excited to solve it too. If I can kind of tell you about the moment and where this mission started from, is for this concept specifically that I'm working on right now, is I opened up one of my drawers and I immediately noticed like all these lipsticks that are completely like almost new that I've never used or have tried once and will never use again because I was really excited about them when I bought them. And then once I put them on, they really didn't work for me. And so I feel like that's a problem for a lot of people right now. And I'm like, okay, like the process behind it of trying to figure out what beauty product is really going to work for you is such a personal thing, and it's really hard to get good information about what's going to work for you. And so I feel like that, knowing that I have this problem that a lot of these other people have, and having a solution in mind that may work and make people's lives easier is really what drives me.
I love it. You're that mission-oriented founder. You just want to have
Yeah.
this thing exist in the world one way or another. That's going to have staying power. I want to ask because everyone has these different motivations, and I don't think people talk about them as much, right? That idea, like, I would imagine a lot of folks aren't really honest about themselves, what their motivations are. So it's really cool that you sort of started with that, and it's like definitely going to sustain you. So, um, just to like wrap up a couple of questions here, kind of to round this out into more present day, right? How are things going? What are some of the things that you found yourself like less about like big learning curves, but like as you're just like in it, in the weeds, day to day, what are some of the places you've had to rely on others for support, help? Again, whether it's tactical, whether it's that connection to that random person, like just what's it like being a founder and having, being able to do so much, but needing to do a lot more? Like how have you had to go get help and what have those pieces been
Yeah.
for you at this juncture?
So the thing with being a CEO and founder is that you kind of need to know or have some knowledge or ability to think through every single part of the business end to end. And for me, knowing, I come from a business and marketing background, and with some tidbits here and there for a lot of other parts, there are a lot of things that I'm lacking too. I'm not a technology expert. I don't code for a living, for example. And so that's been kind of one of the hurdles for me is, how do I do this and kind of teach myself enough to be able to make good decisions when it comes down to really creating a product and more of the technology piece of it, knowing that that's a big part of what I want to create. But I would say like being in day one, and I know you didn't prompt this, I just really love this program and it's worked really, really well for me because I came on board and first of all, I didn't know what to expect. I was really counting on having some people that I can talk to and riff ideas off of, but the wealth of information and resources that I have gotten has been amazing. Like in all of my one-on-ones with people, I've just kind of come to them and said, here's my struggle. I'm not sure where to start. How do I create a community platform? And so many people have been like, well, have you heard of this, and that? And, have you tried all these things? And so I've gotten so much good advice just being a part of this, having conversations with all these amazing people that I feel like have really helped to set me on the right track.
I love how you said it. There's basically like so many things. A CEO needs to do a little bit of everything. And but you also brought up, I just want to double click on the big thing you said, which is being a non-technical founder, building a startup,
Yeah.
somewhat, technology is always a player, even if it's a different kind of business, a marketplace or a D2C thing. So how have you been wrestling with that? That's going to be a super common experience for many, many, many folks, right? How have you mentioned the little ways that you're solving it, or you're at least like thinking about it, but have you
Mhm.
been do you have advisors? Do you have a technical team on the side on a offshore team? Like what have been some of your solutions even, or some of the things that you found work for you as a non-technical founder playing ball in this space?
Yeah, so honestly, I think for me, yes, I will probably look for a technical advisor and I have somebody in mind. I just need to go have the conversation. But for me to kind of like, I know internally, I just have like this sense of confidence within me that I can figure out anything that can be put in front of me. And I feel like if I can just immerse myself in some of the tools that are already out there, like there's so many things that help people who are not technical right now be able to get things out the door. Like you can create a website without even having to code things, right? So there are all these resources out there. And I feel like if I can immerse myself in those and learn enough to have some good knowledge to be able to make good decisions, as well as partner with a technical advisor, I feel like I'd be on a really good path.
That's really good framing, I think, for anybody who's just, half a step behind you and is working through the same thing, right? There's things you can do, there's people to help you. There's a lot of options as long as you sort of set yourself up down the road. Um, well, I have one last question for you, and then we're going to wrap up this sort of micro 15-minute interview here. What's one thing that you're looking for support from the community? Whether, when this goes live, people can reach out to you. But like, just to show like, this is how we do it inside of day one. This is what all founders need to do, is like, what's the ask you put out into the universe at your stage of the business?
Yeah, I would say the biggest help that you can give a founder in any stage, I would say, is to provide really honest feedback. If you see something, no matter who you are or what part of the journey you're on, as far as being a customer or a viewer, some sort of a touch point, whatever feedback you have is helpful to a founder. And also, telling other people and referring other people who can give good advice, like even if it could be an early adopter or an enthusiast of this space, if people can help to send along those people to you, that is amazing, because the one thing you really want to do is to talk to as many people as possible about your concept to vet it out. And so any feedback or the more people that you can talk to is just so helpful. It's such a gift.
Perfect. And that's what community is for, right? Especially when you trust each other and it's like, oh yeah, my friend over there or this person I know on LinkedIn, ready for you. So love it. Well, Deeckla, thank you so much for spending time being our inaugural interviewee for this series that we're excited to kick off. Thanks for sharing your story and sort of shining a light on just what it's like to be a founder, as well as a founder in day one. So really appreciate you taking some time today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks.